like I read your book, well, listened to your book, and it's been a minute, but there are some things that have resonated with me along the way, and some things I do remember from your story. But everyone listening in probably hasn't read your book, or maybe or whatever. So just pretend no one knows anything about your
Perfect.
story, and then you share the story you want to share. It can be directly related to your book, it can be directly related to anything you want. Pretend we're at Disneyland and you're in charge. You get to take
Okay.
me where you want to go, and I'll follow along. I'll ask questions along the way. It's very informal. Nothing is off limits. So yeah, just have fun with it, and obviously obscure any details if there's anything like steamy, just for privacy
Totally.
reasons with other people. And so,
Cool.
but yeah, that's it. Those are the only rules. So yeah,
Amazing.
you can just start out, introduce yourself, introduce who you are, start the story where you want to go, and then here I am for the ride.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Well, my name is Brit Barron. I'm a speaker, an author, storyteller. I'm also a pastor at a church here in Los Angeles. And that's something that I've been on my own journey with, right? So I may be similar to a lot of your listeners, or even to you. I grew up in church. So I grew up very much steeped in a community that's centered around church on Sundays. My dad worked in ministry. He didn't work in a church, but he actually worked at an organization. I don't know if you'll remember this or you ever heard of it. It's called Promise Keepers. So it's like a men's. It was really big in like the 90s.
Okay,
I'm
that's dating
probably
myself. Yeah,
much older than you. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. I'm only
Um,
29, so not
oh
too much
wow, you have
memory from the 90s.
your whole life ahead of you.
Yeah,
You were born in the 90s then, right?
I was born in
No,
94.
94. Okay.
1994, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great year. Great year. Um, so we were the family that was at church twice a week. Just really, really in it. And the thing about it is that while I do have a lot of issues with evangelicalism, the more life that I live, the more I can find both in the narrative, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, there were a lot of weird things going on there. I think purity culture, just it got the best of all of us.
Mhm.
Um, and at the same time, I do think it was very beautiful to grow up with this sort of built-in community. I think things like youth groups or
Mhm.
just kind of having a sense of like being a kid and being a junior high or high schooler and having that many adults in your life who care for you, who you would see week to week. There were a lot of beautiful things about that. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think we have to pick one or the other. I think we can hold multiple things as true at the same time. So
Mhm.
I think there were a lot of issues and a lot of things going on. And at the same time, I also think that it created a beautiful experience for myself as a child and as a teenager. And so I can hold those both. Um, my parents, I always joke. It's not like funny, but my parents both
Okay.
had very, very different lives.
Mhm.
So like they just experienced a completely different world. My mom was into gangs and like early in her teen years, and they saw so much, they experienced so much trauma that they always said they never wanted us, their kids, to
Mhm.
walk a day in their shoes. And while I
Yeah.
have had to unpack a lot of trauma from evangelicalism, I always
Mhm.
say I would rather have evangelicalism trauma than some of the things. Like every
Yeah.
generation, we're just trying to push it forward a little bit, right? Which is what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do at the church I'm at now, is to say like, okay, well, how can we have this experience without some of the bad things I had to go through? And
Right.
maybe every time it can get a little better. So that's a little bit about. I grew up in the church, and I'm you know, I love to talk. I'm a talker.
Yeah.
So you probably know this. When you grow up in the church and you like to talk, everyone's like, you should be a pastor. That's just like the
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
pipeline,
That's, yeah, trajectory you're going, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "Do you like people? You like to talk? You're in."
Mm,
And so I fell sort of into ministry and worked at different places. But by the time I was 26, which is very young, um, I was a pastor at this mega church. And that was a startling experience because I was like, part of me was like, I made it, you know,
mm,
I did everything I want to do. But,
yeah.
you know, I grew up in evangelicalism with this idea that I was like, this is some of the trauma of it is like you start to get this root narrative that you're bad, right?
Mm,
They're like, God loves you, except, all these parts of
mm,
you. And you're like, what?
yeah.
That doesn't sound like good news, you know?
Yeah.
Um, or God loves you, you're perfect, except your body is bad and every desire you have is bad. And you're like, wait,
Mm,
so am I perfect or am I bad? Like, does God love
yeah.
me or is there a caveat? Um, and so because of that, I grew up just so disconnected from my own self. Like I was very good at like, what do I need to be for God to love me, for the church to accept me, for me to excel in ministry? Um, but just had no connection to my own self, my own body. I had no idea what was going on. Um, and so that's why it's not surprising that I wasn't even aware of my own sexuality until I was, yeah, 26, 27. Like that
Um,
was, I mean, and that's up there, like,
yeah. That's a long
I have a
time
lot of
to not
friends.
know.
Yeah, literally. I have a lot of friends now, right, who are gay and queer, and they'll say, like, oh, yeah, like, I knew since I was 10, when
Mm,
I was 12. And I'm like, no, I legitimately had no idea. And it kind of like the church created this perfect space for that, because it is very disconnecting. They're like, don't think about yourself, don't think about your body, don't think about all these things, like only think about God. And so I
yeah.
spent like 26 years being like, do I even have a body? Like, but you know what I mean? Like,
Mm, yeah.
and you're not supposed to date or want these things, or you're supposed to be very pure. So all of it was just a perfect setup for me to have no idea what was going on in my own life.
Yeah.
um, so I became a pastor, and then that's when I started to discover more about my own sexuality. And then that's actually when I met who is now my wife. Um, and what a journey. You
Mm,
know, it's that moment where you say, like, the entire world that I grew up in that I'm comfortable with will be at stake if I choose what is true and right and good to me, right? So up until this point, even though evangelicalism had all these issues and I kind of knew that, um, it wasn't anything big enough for me to be like, I need to, it's worth not having this community to like
mm,
do that, because at this
yeah.
point, all your friends are from church. My parents are so steeped in church. Everything is church. Like my job is church, my life is church, my friends are church. And so to say like, could I give that all up? You know,
Mm,
um, or should I pretend to be something I'm not so that I can keep it? Will it ever feel good again?
mm,
Um, which is where I think a lot of people land with church. People who aren't gay, people just, I think a lot of people reach a point with church where they say like, to fully be in this community, I would have to pretend to be something I'm not.
yeah.
Either my sexuality, my belief about other people's sexualities, my ideals about the world, my beliefs about myself, my views about women, whatever it is. Most people like have this point where they're like, I could either stay in this community and pretend to be something I'm not, or I risk losing the whole thing. And that's a super, messed up place to be because you're like, I love
Mm,
this. I love church. My
yeah.
friends are here.
I'm curious before we get a little too far away.
Yeah.
Is you're mentioning a lot about like sexuality and your identity, not knowing that side of you until you're 26. But I'm curious as because for me, in my journey and with evangelicalism and growing up in church and things of that, it was always like women aren't supposed to be pastors. And
Yes.
like women can't teach from the stage to men and just all that like patriarchal stuff. And I
Yeah.
know for me now, I still wrestle with the idea of going to a church that like might not have women pastors or like women leadership. But that's something pretty big for me and my wife when we're looking for a community to go into is like, is this all male run or is there a balance between, of now there's someone my wife can look up to, someone I can also learn from. And so I'm curious about like what your experience was growing up and going into ministry as a female pastor. And what was that like
Yeah.
for you? What challenges did you encounter as well?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think it was, I mean, there definitely were a lot of challenges. And I think
Mm,
they stemmed from it was it was confusing because my dad, who was like, and my dad is very much like a guy's guy, like
yeah.
church leader, all these things. But he also is like epitome of like girl dad. Like he was just like, you can like do absolutely anything you want. Like no one can stop you. Like you have to define. He was very, very like progressive in that way with me and my sister. And was always telling us like if someone said you can't do something, like you absolutely can. And
Mm,
this is like a random story about my dad, but you know that
yeah.
Marianne Williamson quote that's like, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond measure. It's
Mm,
like it's this very, very, very long quote. Anyways,
yeah.
my dad made me and my sister memorize that and like say it back to him every day before middle school. So he was like raising like leaders.
Yeah.
And so I had that experience at home. Um, and then I had a different experience kind of in the church. So even I went to a Christian college and at my time, like while I was a student at a Christian college,
Mm,
they hired their very first ever campus pastor who was a woman. And the first time she spoke in chapel, some of the students walked out because
wow.
they were like, yes. And this is like, I'm not that old. Like, I literally, like, this is, and the Christian college was in LA. So it's like, it's not even like,
Mm,
this is like, Alabama in the 60s.
yeah.
Um, so that was, those are some of the beginnings where I was like, whoa, people really don't want women to lead. And I think that put even a little bit more of fire under me.
Mm,
And I think advocating for myself as a woman in ministry, while there was pushback, there still were places that I could move my way into. Versus, I think as a queer person, it was like hard stop.
yeah.
Um, so as a woman, I think there was, and like becoming a pastor at that church, when I was only 26, and when I started, I was the only woman on staff, or the
Mm,
only woman who was a pastor on staff. Um, and that would be something I would always be like sort of hammering down on.
yeah.
I'm also bright for those of you who are listening
Yeah.
and can't see me. I'm also black, so I'm a black woman, and so I think all of these things, being black, being a woman, wanting to be in leadership in the church, I definitely hit a lot of walls, but none of them that were sturdy enough to sort of like hold me back.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
until the conversation of my sexuality. So I think as a woman, and still today, I think churches are just the patriarchy, the white supremacy, it's pretty deep in there, right? And so,
Mm,
I mean, you don't have a lot of, even like, we're still so segregated. Even a lot of affirming churches
yeah.
aren't necessarily very racially diverse, or you have these
Mm,
very racially diverse churches that aren't affirming, or you have these churches that are, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
it's still very siloed, so trying to
Yeah.
integrate my whole identity, yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. That's really good because I definitely resonate with that. And I've talked to a few people as well, and they're like, they identify as queer, or and they're part of the LGBTQ community, and they're like, and it's just like you said, there's still silos even in these like quote like affirming churches, because then someone mentioned who I've had on before, they were like, that just sometimes becomes the identity of a affirming church. It's like now they're
Hmm.
deciding who's in, who's out, who are we affirming
Yeah,
to, where does that, how far are we going to go? So
yeah,
yeah, so how does that impact your um, journey today with being a pastor at a church, and how does that tie into what your mission is day to day?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think what you just said was right on. I think a lot of times we humanity people, um, we leave one thing for another if we don't ever get to the root of it. And
Mm,
so I think one of the root sort of like evils, to use like a random word,
yeah.
of evangelicalism is actually fundamentalism. Like that is the right. So the whole one of the biggest issues there is fundamentalism, which is basically like who's in, who's out.
Mm,
You have to say the right prayer, wear the right things, know the right words. You have to read the right books. You have to do all these things to stay in our club.
yeah.
And that's why it's so toxic and damaging for a lot of people, because as soon as they become outsider of that, they're outside. Now, on the other end, I think what's been interesting is that we've seen like affirming or progressive or, liberal
Mm,
churches, groups, whatever, go over here, and they still have that same root evil. They still have fundamentalism. It's just around a different set of ideals. So
yeah.
now it's like you have to have the right social justice language. You have to have the right inclusion. You have to read the right books. You have to know the right names. You have to talk. It's all the same things. They're just
Yeah.
different books, different words, different ideas. But it's still the same root cause of fundamentalism. And so I think something we're endlessly trying to do at New Abbey is the name of our church. Something we're endlessly trying to be a part of is like, how do we get out of even this idea of fundamentalism? Like,
Mm,
is it possible to sort of have community as we evolve into the people we're becoming, which is a constant experience? Like something you said earlier before we were recording, not to
mm.
put you on blast, but something I always think of is like, you said you like to even think of the ways that you're a part of systems. So not only the way that the
Yeah.
systems have hurt you, but you have to think like, how have I participated in that hurt potentially?
Yeah.
And so when I think about it, like, even though it would be easy for me to just like make fun of evangelicals and these people in these mega churches and going to church with lasers and fog machines and singing these
Mm,
songs, and like, I'm like, are they idiots? Or are they me literally 15 years ago? And if I can
yeah.
stay connected to the fact that, like, no, that's not them over there. It's not us versus them. They're not on the other side of the line. That was me. Like, I
Mm,
was that
yeah.
person. Like, I have actively participated in this. Like, I was a part of it. I drank the Kool-Aid. I fell for it. So who am I to say that these people are less than me because they fell for the same thing I did? Now, what I was offered was a journey of transformation. And I think what people need to be offered as a journey of transformation instead of like a, you're not right, you're wrong, like let me, because there are still people in my life who are like, you're not arrived yet, you still don't understand enough about this and this, you still don't understand
Mm,
about this. Like, I've in the past 5 years I have undone so many ideas about gender that like I didn't even know were in my brain, because I had
mm,
people in my life who, instead of shaming me or like stop being in community with me for things I didn't know, offered me a journey of transformation. And so I think the goal is never uniformity. Like, the goal for our church is never every single person in this room believes the same things, thinks the
yeah.
same things, reads the same books, acts the same way. The goal is unity. The goal is, can we, at different points in our journeys and transformation, still be in community together? Because I think that's our only way forward, right? Like,
Mm,
that's the only way I got from here to there. That's the only way you got from here to there. Like, we have to stay close to the versions of ourselves that like were a part of the system. I was
yeah.
fully in it. I was like carrying the signs for the, the people now that I'm like, boo.
Mm,
And you
yeah.
have to like remember that. So I think about that when I work now. I'm like, this journey of transformation is for everyone. Healing, growth, maturity is for everyone. And if we can't figure out how to do that in a room together, like, I don't know how far we're gonna get as people, right? Which in our current political climate, I'm like, it's
Yeah.
wild, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody. We were just talking about just that exactly of because it has to do even with this podcast, right? It's like there are all these people, and I want to meet them wherever they are on that
Mm-hmm.
journey, as you said. But that doesn't mean it's bad for me to engage in a conversation for somebody who doesn't go to church, or or
Right.
somebody that might believe something a little bit different in terms of theology. Like, we're all on this journey, and if we can all understand that we're all invited to transformation, and that will look different for everybody from here to there, because we all start somewhere else. We all have this context. You, Britt, have a context of growing up in going into be a church pastor at a mega church, and then transforming with your sexual identity, and you have this totally different context than me, but that doesn't mean we're not invited to the table to figure it out together, and because I think there's so much we can learn in that unity rather than uniformity, as you said. And so I just commend that as well. I also draw inspiration from that because after I read your book, I went and looked up New Abbey, and I started following on social. Even though I lived in San Diego, it's like, oh, I'm going to go support there as well. And so I've learned a lot along the way. And so backtracking into your story of understanding and unlocking that piece of your identity as identifying as queer, and then what did that transformation look like in the midst of church, being in church as on staff, and then coming out of that? What was that metamorphosis per se?
Yes. So I think as someone who grew up in the church, I was always offered like purpose and meaning and connection through the church. What's the church's mission, vision, values? What does the church say that my purpose is? What is the church telling me that God says? So I think, coming out and knowing that I was going to no longer be a part of that, it was the first time in my life that I got to ask myself those questions for myself. What's
Mm,
my connection? What do I believe about God? What's my spirituality? What are my spiritual practices? What's my purpose? What's my mission? How do I, create values and rituals in my life that I stand by? So I think it was incredibly important for me. Yeah, and it didn't happen until I left.
mm, yeah. And then in leaving, now you mentioned before you had with your dad in terms of being a woman, and he was a total girl dad, and giving you that support to keep going through pretty much any door because you can do it. Um, what was that like, having to leave community of now? What did your support system start to fall apart, and what was that like?
Yeah. Um, it was very difficult. It was extremely difficult. And it was very hurtful. I think, I talk about, so when my wife and I came out, my wife, who's now my wife at the time,
Mm, yeah.
was my girlfriend. We met at the church because she was the creative director of the church. So
Mm,
spicy story. Um, and so this was both of our community. And so we had many nights where we sort of cried together and we were like, what's going to happen? I think we knew a lot of people were not going to be down,
yeah.
and we knew some people might support us, but we didn't know how those numbers would shake out,
Yeah.
And I think initially in the first wave of us coming out, there was a lot of disappointments. The people who we had worked for, my bosses, um, I knew they weren't affirming, and I knew they weren't going to be like, hey, like, it's all cool. Like, I knew, but I didn't know what they were going to do. And so, honestly, it's like a week after we came out, they made the entire staff sign a statement against homosexuality, which was just like,
Mm.
and I, okay. Um, and so we had some hurtful conversations. We had a lot of people who just kind of never heard from again. And then, of course, we had people who were equally surprising, who were very supportive. Um, Honestly, my parents being some of them, coming out to my parents was like very scary. Um, and I think initially they were actually pretty surprised, mostly because how old I was. They were like,
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
actually thought it was gonna happen. Um, but my parenting and my mom was like, "Yep, yep, I'm down. I'm in. Okay." Like, and my dad, was like, "Yes, we definitely need to figure something out, but like, we love you. We've always said that. So like, this isn't gonna change." And I think that put enough like wind in my sails to be like, okay, I can deal with the other stuff. And my parents,
Yeah.
I will give them endless credit. What they did, which is like still so special to me, is like the next week they had everybody's book. And they went online and they were like found a Christian like supportive Christian parents of our like LGBTQ kids or some kind of like Facebook group. And they
Wow.
started like, reading Matt Vines and all these things. Which is just and this is what I like saying, I'm like, all you can ask from someone is that they like go on the journey of transformation. Like, I did not expect my parents immediately upon me coming out to be like, oh, actually, I'm familiar with all this terminology. Like, oh, I know all these things. Like, they had no idea. They were
Yeah.
like, okay, we love you, and we don't know, we need to figure some things out. So we lost a lot of friends. We lost that community. And then we had some like really special people show up for us in special ways. And that has,
Mm.
those people are still in our lives. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Just the fact that you had that support the whole time from your family, it's really, really special.
it's
Um,
very special. It's very unique, and
yeah.
we understand that privilege. My wife's parents were also super supportive. So we kind of were like, it's a rare experience that we got to have. So I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Yeah. Um, and I know we covered a lot, and to kind of help round the conversation out, I always ask people to um, look back on your journey and look at young Brit. And as you said, people are on this journey of transformation, and you can look back at someone else and be like, that was me. Um, or look forward and be like, that's going to be me. Like, I aspire to be that. So what would you see, what do you say when you think about your younger self and what that younger Brit would want to know, or what that you would want them to know moving forward on their journey? Or, so what advice, I guess, is what I'm asking, would you give?
That's a great question. I actually love that question. Um, Gosh, the first thing I have two things.
Mm.
And these are things that my wife and I say to each other all the time and remind ourselves of. And the first I could tell Tiny Brit, there is no rule book. I think the things that we are supposed to do in our lives at certain times in certain ways, and the things that we are supposed to achieve and supposed to say and supposed to do, none of them are real. And so I would have liked to have a grasp on that at a younger age, that there is actually no rule book, that you get to make your own way, however that looks. And the second one is, honestly, don't take it too seriously, whatever it is. I think now at this point in my life, I'm like, it all comes and goes. Like, you have to be along for it.
Yeah.
Try not to take it too seriously.
Mm. And then last question, which is these ones always surprise me. What's one thing you want someone to know about you? Maybe it's someone that's coming into this conversation, they just heard your story for the first time, or someone who maybe has followed you and supports you day in and day out. What is one thing you want to get out there to tell people because even walking away from the conversation, that you're just gonna kick yourself later. Be like, I wish I would have said this, or I
Hmm.
wanted to add this, but it never came up. What is that one thing?
Oh, well, I don't know if this is the place for that, but I just finished final edits on my second book.
No, this
And
is the place for that.
this is okay, right, this is the place for that.
Yeah.
So it's coming out October 1st, and I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it. And it is literally about some of what we talked about. It's about how to have conversations with people we disagree with. So
Hmm.
that is where my brain's been at, and that is one thing I'd like to say, and I'm very excited about it.
That's awesome. And then on that same topic, you can plug your first book too, if you want to share about that.
Yes. So I have my first book. It's called Worth It. It is my book, baby. It's the book that made me an author.
Hmm.
And it's about so much of the story of choosing myself, and sort of overcoming that fear. And I think it's great. And I love that one too. So I'm very, yeah,
There we
I love it.
that.
Yeah.
It was a good one. I will say that. And there is an audiobook version for those of you like me that don't read the fastest. So
Yeah.
thank you, Brett, for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you
I'll
for having
have
me.
to read your new book when it comes out, and then maybe we can have you on again and we can talk about those topics. It'd be really, really
Yeah.
fun.
I love that.
All right. Well, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from you in the future. I'll let you know when this is about to come out, and I'll shoot you an email probably a few weeks. And so, yeah, any questions?
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much.